Those of you who have seen my review for the original Trigun manga might be surprised that I'm not reviewing all of the sequel, Trigun Maximum, at once, and I'm instead reviewing it in parts. The reason for this is quite simple. Maximum is almost 5 times longer than the original series, and is such an interesting journey to talk about that it requires a bit more depth than I could convey in a single review. So, I will be looking through each arc of Trigun Maximum, no matter how long or short, to better showcase the series and all the weird and wonderful things about it. This will be a very similar format to that original series review, and will assume that you've already seen that, or at least know about the Trigun manga ahead of time. Beginning with the first 3 volumes of Trigun Maximum. Continuing on from the cataclysmic cliffhanger of the original Trigun manga was never going to be easy. Opening with a new title in a different magazine, the monthly manga Trigun Maximum had to move the story forward from all those strange events at the end of the previous series and provide an opening for both new audiences and old audiences. So the opening of Trigun Maximum needs to function as a direct continuation of the last story as if nothing happened, work as a standalone sequel that is completely fresh to new readers, while also continuing on the plot points that were established earlier in the first series and introduce new readers to characters that they aren't familiar with. Writer Yasuhiro Naitao chose a very intelligent solution to this problem. While this feels like the next chapter in Vash the Stampede's life story, it also works as a new beginning. And at least initially, you don't need to have read or even looked at Trigun before starting Trigun Maximum. All you need to know for these 3 volumes to work is that Vash the Stampede is an infamous mystery that has been at the heart of horrific disasters across the wasteland, a man so dangerous he is classified as a natural disaster. After a confrontation with the resurrection of his worst enemy and an incident that left a hole in the moon, he disappeared in the hopes of finding a better, peaceful life. 2 years later, a town's entire population simply disappear, with the only clue being a name written in blood for all the world to see. Knives. This incident causes mysterious preacher Nicholas D. Wolfwood to track down Vash the Stampede, who, despite all of the stories, is a pacifist unlike any other. Vash has been living in seclusion, but upon hearing that Knives is causing mayhem again, he once again arms himself with his gun and joins Wolfwood on his quest to stop Knives once and for all. Unfortunately, Vash's return means that the servants of Knives are once again moving to battle him. Once again, the gung-ho guns are driven by a singular goal of causing Vash more pain than any man has ever known. The plot is a clean break from the last series, while also being a direct sequel. It's an incredibly simple and basic story. A hero needs to find a villain and stop him, while also having to fight a series of colourful and differently powered henchmen with abilities that you've almost certainly seen before in other manga, sometimes stopping along the way to handle a minor crisis and stop a really strange and cartoonish cyborg criminal. That's all. You don't need to know about Legato Blue Summers, or Vash the Stampede's true power, or Wolfwood's hidden loyalties, or even the rest of the main cast. It's all steadily reintroduced through the first 3 volumes of Trigun Maximum, which is mainly the focus of Volume 1. By telling some short single-chapter stories, it manages to re-establish Vash's character and bring in his supporting cast. Because we already have a villain and a collection of threats to move against, the story is able to move in a clear direction from the beginning. It's a very clear advantage from the first series, which seemed to be meandering quite a lot. In fact, Maximum's first volume is basically a superior remake of Trigun's first volume because Vash's personality and beliefs are more ironed out at this point. When I said Vash the Stampede was a pacifist like no other, I meant it. He might be the quickest drawer on the planet, but he is adamant that he doesn't have to kill anyone in the wasteland. He's always trying to give other people a chance and to be understanding of others. And he goes far beyond most protagonists in this area, and he is drawn as if he deeply regrets ever picking up his gun again. To compare him to another character, Kenshin Himura will not kill you, but he will break your arm in 3 places and ruin your life if it means stopping your evil acts. In situations where his ideals are up against opposition, Kenshin will find a way to remain a proud warrior the audience can respect. For Vash, Avoiding bloodshed is so important he will publicly humiliate himself to try and avoid anyone else being hurt. There is no cruel mercy or fate worse than death situation with Vash the Stampede in a fight. It's just mercy and the hope for compassion, which is noble in a way, but it's a worldview that is shown to have failings. Volume 1 manages to show what happens when Vash's righteousness clashes with a very complex moral situation, which includes him trying to save an awful person from the murderous fury of an innocent victim. This kindness is both Vash's biggest strength and his biggest character flaw, because he really doesn't know what to say or how to convince anyone else of his ideals. This becomes a much bigger problem when Vash starts meeting the Gung-Ho Guns again, who are people who exist solely to cause him and his loved ones pain. When, in Volume 2, the actual villains start getting involved in the plot again, Vash's ideals clash with both deranged and remorseless killers he's combating, but also clashing with the pragmatic outlook of his travelling companion. We're only 3 volumes into the series at this point, and Wolfwood is already established as a layered and complicated man. Father, pastor, priest, whatever type of holy man he is meant to be. They briefly play it as a joke that the religious man is less accepting of the ideals of forgiveness, redemption, and thou shalt not kill than the outlaw who has been branded a walking natural disaster, but it is a very serious issue and a sign of how bad this world has become. It is a planet where even a man of God has to sacrifice his ideals for the sake of survival, and a place where good can only be done through committing evil, which is the central conflict of Wolfwood's character and his relationship with Vash. Wolfwood was introduced as a much softer person in the original series, but in the closing chapters made it very clear that there was something more to him, and his reaction to seeing a hole blown in the moon pushed him into even darker territory. Something he actually seems to regret. You'd think that interacting with Vash the Stampede would make him more relaxed because of his idealism, but if anything, Wolfwood is angrier around Vash than anyone else because of that idealism and what it says about Wolfwood. If Vash is right that the evil don't have to be killed for the sake of the innocent, it means that Wolfwood doesn't have to kill but chooses to do it, which would make him, in his own eyes, a bad person and a failure as a holy man. So it's almost as if he wants Vash to be wrong about people, or else he couldn't live with himself. But if people can't be saved from their sins, what hope is there for Wolfwood? And how can he call himself a priest? Or is the world exactly how he says it is, and Vash can't battle Knives with these feelings holding him back, because Knives lives without limits or compassion? While also seeing and admiring the good in Vash, Wolfwood almost wants him to fail to justify his own lifestyle and to ensure that they are ready to confront their target. It's the huge conflict between Vash and Wolfwood that gets really aggressive and intense at moments because they are arguing about the value of human life. This is made worse by Vash's mysterious nature. Part of the reason why Vash can preach these ideals is that he is more than human, meaning he has skills and endurance that the average person can't have. The depths of this mystery absolutely terrify Wolfwood, and Vash can't completely trust Wolfwood because he knows more about Knives than he should. It's a working relationship that is strained from the beginning and is on the verge of completely shattering. But it gives both characters room to improve as allies and people, while also allowing each of them to face their own challenges, both with each other and against the villains. The main villains of Volume 2 and 3 aren't really anything to write home about. They are humans who gave up their humanity for the sake of power, or maybe they're only capable of having such twisted desires because they are human at heart still. One of them can barely talk, and the other is too insane to express much of anything. They managed to push Vash and Wolfwood though, with the pair getting involved in very different action scenes and conflicts. Wolfwood gets stuck in violent, gory, loud struggles for his own life, while Vash's problems are quieter and his foes do some truly awful things. It's a good way of contrasting the two, especially as Vash remains quietly furious and Wolfwood becomes louder and more aggressive and starts to enjoy himself while struggling with his insecurities. Despite the villains of the first 3 volumes mainly being uninteresting as characters, the other gung-ho guns who are briefly set up at least have the beginnings of personalities and emotional range. While Night Owl is certainly scrambling to put all of his hero pieces back into position in these volumes, he clearly has new ideas for his villains. Mid-Valley had little personality last time we saw him, but he seemed to be the most loyal member of the gung-ho guns. Here, he is much more critical of Legato's recent leadership and acts as if he wants to leave by force, if he could. The problem is that he is working for Legato Blue Summers and Knives, so there's no way of escaping. Legato Blue Summers himself has been substantially altered since his first appearance. It feels natural following what happened last time he appeared. The change is acknowledged and he fulfills the same basic function within the plot. But Legato is no longer a cold, heartless mastermind. Legato is very unhinged. I don't think I have ever seen a steak dinner that was so unsettling and awkward. Night Owl doesn't try to undo the damage Knives inflicted on Legato 2 years ago. It's very troubling, and Legato doesn't seem to be upset despite, well, what he can't do anymore. He carries both the same and a very different type of menace depending on the scene, because he is either scarily unstable or eerily calm. Now, our main villain is Knives, and he is wearing a particular leather outfit with spikes and a mask that always hides his face. But we've already seen his face in the previous series, and there isn't really a reason to hide anything. Besides looking like something Tsutomu Nihei would have drawn in Biomega, there really isn't much to say about Knives yet. The oddly close and compassionate relationship he has with Vash isn't explored, neither is his genocidal rage against humanity. While on the topic of designs, the art in Trigun has improved dramatically. Still rough, and with some borderline unreadable moments, but Night Owl's creativity is actually succeeding more than it's failing. Reading this again, and after getting accustomed to how this man draws over the past year or so, the action seems much clearer now. This process is known as adjustment, or Stockholm Syndrome, although some of it is really strange, like the moment where Vash cries tears of blood, and his killing intent seems to flood an arena, and Night Owl doesn't seem to be able to draw small panels without them looking comedic even in serious scenes, with the shift between drama and comedy and back to drama being unbelievably jarring, especially as it can happen within the same page. And other moments are just confusing nonsense because the art doesn't always convey movement or actions. There is some really bad paneling and page layouts in this series, which clearly have some thought put into them, but the skill to make them just isn't there yet. Volume 3 has a scene that should be absolutely amazing for Vash, trying to stop somebody from falling, but it's let down by the presentation. It's a good idea, but the execution stops it from being a classic moment that it really should be. Re-examining it, it's still a good scene, but it's not what it could have been. The ideas are sometimes failed by their execution, almost as if he's a better writer than an artist, which is almost certainly what Yasuhiro Night Owl is. That said, Night Owl manages to get some unique value out of common ideas. The big giant monster man that can shrug off bullets is one thing. You've seen that a dozen times now. Night Owl's use of this really basic concept for a villain is unique in how far he is willing to take the visual of a monster that can't stop pulling itself forward, but mainly because of the explanation behind that character and power in the manga. I don't think I have seen a twist in an action battle manga that was so bizarre while also being played completely seriously. You honestly have to see what that monster in Volume 3 is for yourself, because there's no way you'll believe me if I say it out loud. Also, Night Owl finds some very nice things to do with Vash's hair. He also manages to give Vash very sad eyes when times are tough. And the minor villains for single chapter stories can look as if they're from a completely different series, almost as if they don't fit with this actual series. While I have praised Yasuhiro Night Owl's creativity and how he establishes the complex relationship between Vash and Wolfwood, he doesn't handle all of his characters as well. Knives doesn't really have a role in this story besides the shadowy master of evil who looks way taller than he actually should be, but that's nothing compared to Millie Thompson and Meryl Streep. The insurance agents that followed Vash for a while are brought back into the fold, and it's difficult to talk about them because the anime expanded their roles. They are very minor supporting characters and comic relief here, despite having a decent chapter devoted to introducing them. They very quickly fall into the background. Hopefully they become more involved in the story later on. The first 3 volumes of Trigun Maximum serve as a good, if flawed, revival of a franchise. Despite the very basic plot and the weaknesses of the art, the series sets up a complex supporting hero and his relationship with the protagonist. This almost completely supplants the original series through its consistent characterization and established clear threat and focus for the story that lets the writer move in more interesting directions. If you're interested in the Trigun manga, but you were disappointed by the first 2 volumes, Trigun Maximum is a much better beginning to the series, but it still needs some of the context provided by the original manga, although this actually inspires confidence that the series can now evolve and grow and live up to the potential Night Owl has shown. Thank you for watching. Good night.